So, Nick, I feel like we're just trying to punish ourselves because we spent months self-isolating, staying in the house, not interacting with other people. What's like one of the first movies we talk when we come back?
Panic Room. This is kind of our Panic Room. Yeah.
So I think right now we thought this was a horror movie. At least I did the last time I watched it because I was reliving all of these moments fighting over pizza slices with my wife. So I'm living in fear right now of Panic Room.
We're all kind of have our own Panic Room, yeah. After it's been considered chic.
Oh yeah.
For elite people. Yeah. I think everybody has some form of a panic room now.
Yeah, it was the hip thing to do, and I only wish I had gotten on the train with it while I had the chance because my home was not panic proof for what we went through. But that's what we're going to talk about here today is David Fincher's oft forgotten film, I think, Panic Room. Yeah. I think it's his only film that doesn't even have a Blu-ray release. It hasn't really made it outside of that time frame in which it was made.
Out of all of his films, this one is kind of a forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good time to review it and talk about it because it's one of his, even though he has great films, it's one of them actually that doesn't get discussed very much. And it did a lot for him. It elevated him before. So.
Definitely. So grab your supplies, get huddled down, make sure no one's in the house, because it's time for Kyle and Nick on Film. We're talking Panic Room. All right, welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe.
I'm Nick Palodichuk, host of the St. Paul Filmcast, where you can find iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher and Google Play. Today we're going to talk about one of David Fincher's forgotten films. Actually, it's a little more appreciative to me through his whole career, but Panic Room, which at the time came out was not really a popular thing. I think it's almost like they've developed it for the movie.
Yeah, I know that there was an underground, and I think it was mostly doomsday prepper kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's just, and especially coming off for David Fincher coming off of Fight Club, and of course Howard Shore, who did the music, coming off Lord of the Rings. They were both looking for smaller films. Fight Club had 150 locations in its shoot. Panic Room 1, really. All shot inside a house and a panic room, of course. Shore, of course, spending years working on, 13 hours worth of music for Lord of the Rings, wanted something that he could get a bit more intimate with. And I think that's maybe why the film hasn't gotten the audience that it needs. I mean, it's purely a guess, but I feel like it's a small, intimate movie. It doesn't have the flair of a Seven, of a Fight Club, of
like a David Fincher film does have.
Yeah, and in fact, when we talked about watching it, I saw it right when it came out in 2002. So it's been that long since I've watched it. I was in my head going is it a Fincher movie? It's just in the recess.
It's dark enough.
Yeah,
it's dark enough. Yeah.
Having watched it now,
metaphorically and visually,
18 years later, it's definitely a Fincher movie on a rewatch, but I didn't know his filmography when I saw the film the first time.
David Fincher likes to shoot at night. Surprise.
Yeah.
When I actually saw it for the first, when it came out in 2002, some things you might have not known at the time is Dwight Yoakam actually was a country star, more or less. You see him in this film. He was in Sling Blade. That was his first kind of movie. But actually, when we went to see it, and you see Dwight Yoakam in it, people in the audience what? That's Dwight Yoakam, the country singer.
Yeah, and I'm not a country singing fan. So for me, I saw his credit on the film, and I turned. Everybody knows Dwight Yoakam. At least back when the film came on. I mean, I had never heard his music, and I turned to my folks who I was watching the film with, and I was like, he's in this?
And he kind of plays the cliche bad guy, introverted, he's not going to say anything, but he's going to go off eventually.
He's too far.
He's too far. But then on the flip side, this is Jared Leto before he became a musician.
Yeah, I think he had done My So-Called Life and Urban Legend, and really hadn't popped. And it's kind of funny. It's it's like if Michael Jordan had gotten famous when he returned to basketball, because Jared Leto really disappeared after this string of films. He did Fight Club, of course, as well with Fincher, but then he kind of disappeared and focused on his music, then came back and became the Oscar-winning actor that we know today.
Obviously, Kristen Stewart wasn't really known at the time. In fact, we watched it, you see it now and you're like, wow, that is Kristen Stewart, but a little unknown actress at the time. Really, the only powerhouses when it came out was Jodie Foster and Forest Whitaker, and this is after Jodie can probably do all the films she wants to do, and this is before Forest Whitaker won his award. For Last King of Scotland.
So for those of you that haven't seen it, of course, Foster plays Meg Altman, a mother who's recently divorced from a kind of a richer, loftier lifestyle, and her daughter Sarah, played by Kristen Stewart, move into this home. They discover the home as a panic room, and I think it's literally the first night they move in, it's beset upon by three.
It's that movie realm where things
people.
go. Yeah, it's that movie kind of magic where things go fast because it's just kind of.
Well, I was thinking about that when I was watching it again. Like, at least has a point to why the first night they move in, because it's settled upon very early on that like they got confused about when people would move in. They thought it would be empty, but just happens to fall. And there's still a little bit of luck to it, or bad luck, I guess.
That's what I'm trying to.
But I do think that there's a purpose to it in the film, which I found quite surprising, because I didn't remember that the first time I saw it. But of course, you got your three villainous characters. Forrest Whitaker plays Burnham. Dwight Yoakam is Raoul. Jared Leto is Junior. Coming into this place, they aren't all on the same page at all.
No, and this is 10 years after Jodie did Silence of the Lambs, where she has this character that gets changed into predominantly a strong female character. And here, this evolution of, she doesn't really project that in this movie, where she's more of a mother.
Yeah, and I know originally Fincher wanted Nicole Kidman in the role.
I guess
she wasn't able to take, because he was aiming for more of a Hitchcockian, like the birds, the blonde who is so innocent.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I looked at it. This is like a reverse lens of Rear Window. This is like Rear Window, but let's go inside the apartment, and the bad guys are in this house, as rather projecting.
Yeah, so he was going for a Hitchcockian thing, and when she passed on the role, she eventually did a cameo as the new girlfriend of her ex-husband. Voice cameo in the film. Okay. But then Jodie Foster was brought in. The film became a little bit more politicized, because that was what she was known for at the time. And so you can see that kind of evolution. And I think the Foster thing works better than it would have just in my head with Nicole Kidman. I think Fincher works with a little bit more gritty, a little bit more of that. And this is still relatively early in his career. He really didn't get a lot of projects after Alien 3 and that whole debacle with that. And I think it kind of he was kind of coming up on himself. And,
I want to talk about cinematography, because Conrad Hall is one of the most accomplished cinematographers in the world. He's done Close Encounters, Cool Hand Luke. He's the one that The Loud's Full of Flares. The last film he ever did was Road to Perdition. His son, Conrad Winchester Hall, so just to make it two, worked cinematography. This is one of his first movies to do cinematography on the film.
And so, since then, I know he's done the Punisher.
That was Punisher.
His next, He did Olympus Has Fallen fairly recently. But yeah, he actually was brought on too, because the original DP left production after 2 weeks.
Which is Darius
Kanji?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm saying it right, but he left after 2 weeks, and he's gone on to do things like Uncut Gems, Okja.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring
some really incredible films.
I think it was the only person in the theater, and I saw Uncut Gems, and I saw Darius Kanji. He's like, yes, this is gonna be good. Yes.
So you kind of have that problem where you've had to readjust with a new actress, change your tone to fit the actress, adjust your DP. Like, there was a lot of things that could have gone off the rails with the film, but I think overall, like, the visual sense here is definitely an early Fincher evolving, because from Seven to films like Gone Girl and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, there is an evolution there where it kind of becomes gritty without the gore over time.
I see that.
There's like an emotional grittiness.
After you bring it up, yes, yeah.
And I think this is definitely an evolution of that piece, because he doesn't use a lot of CG. Only, I think there's a few like camera shots.
That long tracking shot that looks kind of doesn't really.
That reminded me kind of Fight Club, because Fight Club has some of those long CG tracking shots too, and you can tell the age on those two.
Yeah.
It's not like it doesn't pull you out of the film, but like you can tell the age has.
When it goes down the steps and through the toaster or whatever, then you see the close up of the bad guys. And that was something when they're exploring with camera work nowadays. But now it kind of doesn't really fit nowadays. Yeah, it looks kind of uncomfortable to see. But
yeah,
they're just it's the new toys, so we got to play with the new toys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we talk about films like like Jurassic Park CG is such over the top, but they did it slowly. They took their time with it, and we were in that evolution of CG is supposed to make things easier, so you got to move faster, and that's been a problem for a lot of films. As CG has gotten better, is they focused on getting it done faster, when if you take your time, you do it slowly, and you layer it in, you can have films that last longer. And I think, thankfully, this is an issue of CG not being that big of a deal in the film.
Yeah.
But it is noticeable in that as well. I love the framing of the actual story, though. it doesn't really begin in the middle of the action. They actually get that slow, kind of almost Hitchcockian setup.
So it does take a while. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit. There's not a lot of action to it. It does have a climax, but yes, it takes. If there's a one minus to it, it does.
I think that the beginning is really incredibly well setting though, because everything in the film has to be set up in order to be utilized as it goes on.
It's clear. It's clever writing that they're house shopping, so you get to see the entire house before the story starts, so you get an idea of being the audience member where everything is in the movie.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have that, you would really struggle as the film plays out, because even with all that, it's a fairly big home for being for being where it is. I mean, the family's well off, so I can understand that, but there's a lot going on. There's multiple levels, and if you don't have a good setup for that scene, almost more important than the characters is that setup for the home and the panic room itself, because if we don't have that, we lose the whole tension of the film.
I use this as a watermark for David Fincher careers, because prior to this in the 90s, when he did Fight Club and The Game, he had a certain people that he worked with. He used to do commercials, and I think he started his career working on a set with George Lucas. And he used the same people when he did commercials and music videos. Here in 2002, as the transition where he gets into using other people. So it's a very obvious transition point, using different editors. In fact, he uses two different editors. One that he always used before in the 90s, which was James Haywood, right? Which did his, I think, Fight Club, I think The Game, and I'm missing one, probably this one, and then transition duties to Angus Wall that he used to work with, and I think they met in college, that he did commercials with and did music with, and then they got back to work together. Both James and Angus cut this movie. Usually when you have more than one editor, it does take away a little bit of the punch.
Yeah. I mean, it can. I didn't feel that as much as I expected when you see two editors. That's exactly what goes through my head.
When you see two editors,
wondering, did one leave in the partway through, and is somebody else basically taking a pre-assembled puzzle and trying to put it together, or is were they working together in conjunction? I've seen it before where a film was almost handed between editors back and forth to give a mixture feeling. But this is one where I didn't feel the editing was a detriment to it. In fact, it's very well edited for some of the more tense scenes.
You're right.
Because you get that slowdown, because they are they're right next to each other, but they're separated by that big, thick door. But then you get scenes like that med bag scene, where she's trying to get it into the panic room before the door closes. And it's such a perfectly done shot. In fact, it's almost like Fincher's, axe scene from The Shining, because it took 103 takes to get that bag to slide the right way. So, I think when it works, it really works well with that tension piece. I think later on in the film, as we start to kind of switch up the locations and what the deal is going on, that's where the pacing can kind of falter a little bit.
Right.
There's some character movements and some introductions and some shocking moments, but then after about 2/3 of the way through, we're kind of wondering where we're gonna go. And there's also some things that I felt Jodie Foster's character could have done. She was presented with opportunities near the end of the film that she could have taken in a certain way, and she chooses another option, and I don't know if that was a smart choice.
So usually with this kind of a movie, when you have limited amount of characters, maybe 5 at most, characters are most important, and I think one of the most interesting is Forrest Whitaker. Even though he's a bad guy, you kind of almost root for him, which is kind of Alfred Hitchcockian. You almost kind of root for the bad guy to get his problem solved, even though the females are the obstruction. This is one of the reasons why I consider Panic Room a noir, because there's so many elements of it. And noir's not a genre, it's a style. And I know a lot of purists are going to reject my interpretation of this as a noir, but it does take place. The female character is the obstruction. All the bad guys in it have a rule, and if they break the rule, there's consequences.
And there's secrets.
There's little secrets.
Characters have secrets in the film that if revealed, can really change the game that's being played. And it is a cat and mouse game that almost has some moments where it switches, and the cat becomes the mouse, and the mouse becomes the cat. It's fun for me to see a film where, in essence, your protagonists are the bad guys. They're the ones coming in. Their goal is to get in. She's literally an antagonist character trying to stop them.
I like that play on what is the hero, what is the bad guy, but obviously Dwight
when it boils down to that, for me though, its biggest problem is I think Jodie Foster's character. She's definitely educated. She's learned, but she's so much smarter than these guys that have broken into the house. And I get that they expected not to have any trouble getting in, but they make some very foolish decisions at times, and it's almost like they're supposed to know this area. Forrest Whitaker designs panic rooms. Like his character in Day to Day, like does this kind of stuff. He works on it. Jared Leto has seen this home before. He's studied this home. Yeah, Raoul is kind of more about the wild card game, but like these guys know what they're doing, and they make some really foolish novice mistakes.
Enough where it kind of takes it out a little bit.
Yeah, and I kind of like you need to have a villain that is a person that is so smart that you don't see them coming.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that I think the villains they bumble a lot.
Yeah.
And she's so much smarter than they are, but she shouldn't be. She's not a person who's she's being in a family with a lot of money. The idea then, of course, is that she's probably not had to do a lot on her own for a while. She probably hasn't had to fend for herself.
That, right? You can,
yeah. And I find a lot. Some of the choices she makes, I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would, fare pretty well in a panic room situation. So I think the villains. David Koepp has this problem sometimes where he relies a little bit of convenience. The screenwriter, David Koepp, of course, who he's done great things like Jurassic Park, but then he's also, of course, written things like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where he relies a bit too much on convenience. And I've noticed in his films where he's adapting from a novel or a previously used source, he does a really great job. I think when he takes the bare bones and really works with something. It's when he's forced to write and start from scratch. It's a brilliant concept. I just didn't buy the villains.
I agree.
So I think overall our focus is, of course, on Jodie Foster. I think the film is still strongly put together all around, but there does have some villainous problems there too. So, recommendation though?
Yeah, recommend if you love David Fincher films. This is what I regard his transitions from the 90s, where he's working very much gritty, and then he becomes more sophisticated. He gets a little more mature after this movie, where he does like The Social Network, Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons. I'm just thinking offhand, Zodiac, where definitely after this movie, and I think maybe it is from this movie that's the transition from his later period that he matures.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely recommendation for me. It's a lost film in a lot of ways. It isn't as celebrated in the forefront.
And it deserves a little bit of that.
Yeah, but it definitely, for some of its faults, I do think that the film overall is a winning movie. It is a tense movie. Where it wins is tension, and that's where it needs to win.
It does have this great allegorical ending.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I think that ending is bought by some of the strong performances throughout the film. And I think the setup, like I said, the concept works really well. It's just the execution of that screenplay that can falter. But I do think it recovers at the end and has a pretty strong finale moment. So definitely recommendation from me. Recommendation from both of us. So Have you guys seen Panic Room? Have you?
In a panic room. That would be good. If you could go in your panic room and see Panic Room.
I may have to build a panic room just to do that. Well, we want to know your thoughts on it too. Yeah. Comment below your thoughts on Panic Room. If you haven't seen it, go search it out and then come back, check it out with us. We really enjoyed revisiting this film. I know it's been a long time for me. So
there's a lot of things I missed about it.
So please let us know your thoughts on the film. We want to hear about it as well. Hey, if you enjoyed this content, drop us a like down there as well. If you want to see more of our content, we have new episodes that come out every single Monday. So go ahead and click that subscribe button as well. We don't take up a lot of your space. We just take up the good space. And if you're interested in supporting the show at all, you can do so on patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. Check out that Patreon. We got lots of fun tiers available. You can help influence some of the films that we talk about. Love them or hate them, we're going to talk about some of your film topics, and we're interested in doing that. So please go ahead and check that out when you get a chance. If you can't support us with the Patreon, click that share button. You got a social media, use it. Get that conversation going
out there. Let's go.
For everybody, I'm Kyle Goethe. You can find my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com. You can check out my other YouTube channel, Goat Film Reviews, there. Follow me on social media at Almighty Goatman.
I'm Nick Palodichuk, host of the St. Paul Filmcast, where I interview local independent filmmakers from the Twin Cities area. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All right, folks, don't panic. Check out Panic Room, and we'll see you guys next time.